I'm Tagi Paksimov, based in Munich, one of the organizers of Agile Munich. I'm quite happy to have you all joining us. I'm taking a look at the chat and I see people from UK, Austria, Germany, US, and Portugal, at least the ones that I can see. So very global, quite happy to have you. Thanks for joining. I want to give you a quick overview of Agile Munich, as some of you don't know it. It's a community of practice, a public and independent one, which was founded in 2014. We got about 2,500 members, and we're happy to be able to join three corners of the industry together. That's the consultancies, speakers from one side, and our members on the other side. Today, we have the honor of having Felipe Castro, one of the go-to names when it comes down to OKRs in the world, with us again. So he was with us in 2018. For those of you who are members of Agile Munich and have been long enough with us, probably could recall, Felipe helped us at that time to do our first virtual meetup in which he kind of joined us from the US. Quite happy to have him back here. I'm quite interested to see what he's got to say just as much as you. I've worked with Felipe not just through the engagement he's had with us at Agile Munich, but also through work and the workshops he's done with us and our clients. I don't know if you can see my video. One of the takeaways I've got is, this is sticky notes. There's a sticker that he's got. Life is too short for waterfall goals. So I'm quite excited to see what he's got to tell us today about. So without further ado, I'm just gonna pass over the mic to Felipe. Thank you.
Thank you, Tagi. Thank you, Risa, for having me. Thank you, everyone, for being here. As Tagi mentioned, I'm Felipe Castro. I'm based in the US. I'm based in Miami. I basically help companies succeed with OKR. And so let me start sharing my screen. Okay. You should be seeing the Golden Gate right now, everyone. So the topic of the talk today is from features to outcome with OKR, right? You can see the logo of Outcomebased. That's basically the company I founded to help companies focus on outcomes instead of focusing on outputs and features, right? So let's start a little bit. We're assuming that by now everyone at least knows what OKR is. So I'll skip the very basics. And I want to discuss with you a very common pattern that we see. Many organizations are doing the same mistake. They're adopting what we call the Tinkerbell approach to OKR. Right? So what do we mean by that? Basically, you take a traditional company with traditional culture, traditional practices, and many people believe that if you just sprinkle some OKR fairy dust over that traditional company, it will magically turn into Google, right? You don't need to change anything, just start using OKR and bam, you're Google, right? Of course, that never works. That was never the goal. Adopting OKR is never the goal. The goal is to change the way of working of the organization. The goal is to make the organization be able to compete in the 21st century, be more innovative, and achieve high performance, right? So there are three conditions for success with OKR, right? First of all, we need commitment and consistency from leaders. They need to understand it's a journey, and they have to be committed to that change and to that transformation. People need to learn how to use it in practice, because there's a lot of why of OKR, lots of high level, blah, blah, blah on OKR, very few hands-on techniques and details. So that's crucial. And finally, and what people usually don't talk about is, we need to unlearn the old model, right? Unless we unlearn the old model, the old mindset, the old practices, we'll be just going back to the Tinkerbell approach, right? So today we'll be talking a lot about unlearning, right? And there's a great book by my friend Barry O'Reilly, titled Unlearn. And that's the definition of unlearning on the screen. Unlearning, Barry describes, is to move away from mindsets and behaviors that were effective in the past, but now limit our success. So we'll be talking a lot about that unlearning part, which is often the thing people don't realize they need to do, right? So let's start with a quick question, right? So just think for a minute, right? And you don't have to answer, right? Just think for a minute. What are the key differences in the way of working of a waiter or waitresses, prefer, and a doctor? Think about the way they work. What are the key differences between those two roles, which are both very important, right? Both roles are very important, both professions are very important. They're just different, right? So if you think about it for a while, the key question of any waiting staff is, may I take your order, sir? May I take your order, ma'am? That's the key question, right? Waiting staff is therefore take your orders and deliver what you ask for. That's it. They deliver what you ask for. If you look the way a doctor works, it's totally different. A doctor makes a diagnostic, right? Collects evidence. She will propose a solution and a treatment based on that evidence. And she will test different approaches. She starts a protocol, and if it doesn't work, we change it. They tweak it and test different approaches based on the evidence, right? So very different roles, okay? And we need, in the Agile community, we need to unlearn the waiter model, the waiter approach. But the traditional approach, the IT mindset is focused on, may I take your order, please, right? That mindset of the business asks you what they need from you, and you deliver that. And there's a different model, which I'm calling the Silicon Valley model, for lack of a better term, which is allowing teams to work the way a doctor works, right? And that's huge, that massive difference between the two, right? And you're seeing 4 gentlemen on the screen, and I'm going to ask you again, what do you think they have in common, right? I'm guessing most of you recognize the one on the right, right? If you don't recognize the other 3, right, let me help you, right? Those are basically the founders of Google, Amazon, and Apple, right? From left to right, so, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Jeff Bezos, and Steve Jobs, right? And when I ask what they have in common, yeah, you may be thinking that they're male, white, living in the US, billionaires, entrepreneurs, but there's a key thing that they have in common that few people know. They were all coached by the same person. They all had the same coach during the formative years of each one of those companies, right? And many people outside Silicon Valley don't know that, right? The guy who actually coached them was called Bill Campbell. He passed away in 2016, and he didn't like to shun the spotlight, so very few people know about him, right? Luckily for us, there's a great book written about him, which is titled The $1 Trillion Coach, right? And in the book, they tell a great story to explain how Bill Campbell worked. Because Campbell, he taught those companies and many others in Silicon Valley the same underlying philosophy, which then each company adapted and evolved in different ways. But they all have the same core philosophy. And there's a great story to understand that philosophy, right? When Campbell was the CEO of Intuit, the software company, he had a meeting with a new product manager. He had hired that product manager from a bank, a traditional company, right? And then they had a meeting with the product manager and the engineers. And then the product manager started telling people, hey, those are the features I want you to develop, right? Those are the features. And then Bill Campbell said, if you ever tell an engineer at Intuit which features you want, I'm going to throw you out on the street. Because Campbell deeply believed that in any business that depends on innovation, telling people what to do is the worst thing that you can do, right? So instead, you teach them the problem. You tell them about the customer problem, about the business strategy, the customer pains, right? and then let them come up with a solution, right? And that's a massive difference from the way most companies work today. And the key to understanding the difference is there's this magic question from Harry Nibber. Right? It says, let's imagine we ask for 3 different teams the same question, right? So we ask them, what are you working on and why? Okay? And then you ask the first team, what are you working on and why? They tell us, oh, we're working on X because we feel like it. And we are done when we don't feel like it anymore. When we're talking about autonomous teams, that's not what we're talking about at all, right? So let's just make it clear. This is just a playground. That's not what we're talking about. Now imagine we ask the same question for the second team, and we got this answer here. We are working on X because Sam said it's important. We are done when Sam's okay with it. This is a team that's not using OKR. It's a team that's using the waiter model. And what's very important is they're doing things because Sam told them to do. That's a key difference. And then you ask the same question for the third team, right? Oh, and they give you a much more detailed answer, right? They'll tell you, we are working on X because we think it's going to move Y, which is important for our customers because of Z. It's also important for our company because of W, right? And they know that they will be done when the metrics have moved, right? This third team is the team that's actually using OKR, and it's using the doctor model, right? And this distinction between we are done when we actually move the metrics that are important versus we are done when somebody tells us it's done, that's the key difference. And the key question is, what do you assign to teams? You can assign solutions to deliver, or you can assign them problems to solve. And let's dive a little bit on the difference, okay? When we say solutions to deliver, we're talking about a specific implementation, specific design. We're telling them, hey, that's what we want. On the other hand, when you're talking about problems to solve, you're giving them, describing them a customer or a business need. And you're letting them figure out the solution. You let them figure out the specifics. If you look at a well-written user story, right, you have the business need right at the end. So I can, that's the need, right? So key difference between assigning to teams solutions to deliver, projects, features to build, versus problems to solve, okay? And one of the things we need to unlearn is the sentence most of you have heard several times, bring me solutions, not problems, right? Give me potential solutions, maybe, right? But give me the benefit and the outcomes and solve the customer need, right? And great quote from Meyer, love the problem, not your solution. Life's too short to build something nobody wants.
Sorry, Felipe?
Yes?
Felipe, I have one question about, before you go too far, about the slide with Bill Campbell, with the book cover of his. What did you say was the summary of the difference of his philosophy to the rest of the companies in tech? You put it in one sentence.
It's basically, it's this one, sorry. It's here.
Before.
That's the one.
The one
on the slide. Can you see the slide?
Yes, it's the one with the book cover.
Yeah, but the distinction is, what the quote from Bill Campbell is, if you ever tell an engineer at Intuit the features you want, I'm going to throw you out on the street. So the key difference is, engineers will come up with way better solution than you can. Right? So that's the quote. Okay? So moving forward here, and you can answer all questions on the chat. right? And then we use an tag again in future and can answer questions in between, okay? So let me give you some more examples of giving teams problems to solve, right? When John Kennedy set out the lunar program in US, what he told NASA was, it told the Congress was, that the nation should commit to land a man on the moon and return safely to Earth before the decade was out, right? So he gave NASA a problem to solve. He didn't tell NASA, hey, I need you to build a three-stage rocket that's liquid propellant with 3 stages, right? And the solution is up to NASA, right? So that's a key distinction. What we want to achieve versus a specific implementation, okay? Another example, when the Japanese started to create the bullet train, they didn't tell engineers, hey, that's the spec of the train. This is the specific implementation we want. They gave them a problem. Hey, we need to shorten the time, the travel time using our railroad. So we need a train capable of going 120 miles per hour. And that was in 58. Okay? So in 58, they gave this challenge to engineers, right? So that's giving teams problems to solve instead of specific solutions, right? And so now it comes to a little bit of controversy, right? In order to move to that approach Bill Campbell described and what we're talking about, we need to respectfully unlearn the Agile Manifesto, right? It was a huge contribution, very, very important, right? But it was from 2001, right? And not everything that's there still applies, right? So the manifesto no longer represents the way high performance teams work today in 2020. So what do I mean by that? Yeah, the manifesto talks about value, very important. The challenge is value is a vague, fuzzy concept. And there's several different ways to measure value, right? And that's the challenge. How we decide to measure value will shape the way we work. And there was an evolution of how we measure value, right? So first of all, there was Waterfall. And they said, oh, the schedule is the measure of progress. Their assumption was, if we follow the plan, we will deliver value. Because for Waterfall, the plan is always right. And then came Agile, which is a way better tool than Waterfall. And then what they said was, the 7th principle of the manifesto, working software is the primary measure of progress. That's the way the manifesto measures value. That's a primary measure of progress. And the underlying assumption is that if we follow the stakeholders, we will deliver value. So we are always showing them working software, and we will deliver value at the end. But is that assumption correct? That's the challenge. Oops, sorry. And there's a quote from Ron Jeffries. I guess you all know. I guess you most all know him, right? So his quote was, choosing the right things to make is, of course, massively important. Agile is intentionally about the making, not the choosing. Okay? So let me repeat that. Agile is intentionally about the making, not the choosing. So Agile doesn't choose what the solution, intentionally. So traditional Agile intentionally follows the waiter model. Again, intentionally. That was the idea, right? And that's what we need to unlearn. Again, I'm not saying we unlearn Agile as a whole. We need to unlearn the manifesto and some of the other old concepts that are related to it. Okay? And a great quote from Mary Poppins. Perhaps the biggest shortcoming of Agile is the way in which teams decide what to do. Decide what to do. For the longest time, answering these questions have not been considered the responsibility of the team. So she's exactly telling people, hey, deciding the solution is not up for the team. That's wrong. Okay? So that's one of the things we need to unlearn. And the key concept is you can't depend on stakeholders to tell you what will work or not. Right? We talk about value in Agile, but the fact is, value is like a joke. You don't get to tell if your joke is funny. The audience gets to tell you if your joke is funny. If you're telling a joke and no one is laughing, you change the joke. With software, it's exactly the same thing. The stakeholder doesn't get to tell, hey, it's valuable. No, your audience gets to tell you if it's valuable or not. And if it's, the audience is not laughing, you change the software, you change the feature. Value is like a joke, right? So in traditional Agile, it's still stuck in the HIPPO model of decision making, which is the highest paid person's opinion, right? Where the executive who makes more money makes all decisions, right? And I have this great cartoon from the book How Google Works, where the team is showing lots of evidence for option A, and the boss says, hey, I want option 2 because I make more money than you, so I'm the boss. Okay? So that's what we need to unlearn from the old model. And when I tell executives, oh, you want to be a data-driven company, cool. So you can't say, I have 20 years of experience anymore. Sorry, not allowed. Your experience is very important. It's just not reliable. Where's the evidence? That's the question. So we have to change the conversation. We have to unlearn 20 years of experience. Right? Sorry, not a reliable indicator. Right? And again, the stakeholders' opinion are important. They tell you about the business, the strategy. They're just not a reliable indicator of success. It won't tell you what will work or not, and it's definitely not an indicator of value. Right? And then some people say, oh, but wait, they did a business case. We have a spreadsheet. I love this quote from Scott Cook, founder of Intuit. Actually, the guy who hired Bill Campbell to be the CEO. So for every one of our failures, we had a spreadsheet. We had spreadsheets that looked awesome. If you look at the companies you work today, I bet, think of the worst project ever, the biggest failure you ever seen in the company work. I'm sure they have a spreadsheet somewhere. that thing would be a major success, right? So projections in Excel are not a reliable indicator of success either, right? So we need to unlearn that traditional model where somebody has an idea, they write a beautiful, amazing looking business case on a spreadsheet, gets approved, and then we spend several months building that thing until we launch. But we never measure if that project actually delivered the benefits, right? So the missing question is, did we actually deliver the promised benefits, okay? So what happens when you actually measure the outcomes? I'm going to quickly run to this. Some data from Microsoft. Rough approximation, 1/3 of ideas generates positive results, 1/3 generates no results, and the remaining 1/3 generates negative results, right? And we have lots of data from other companies as well. If you go to Google, only 10 to 20% of experiments work. I'm going to run a little bit here, okay? Slack, get used to 70% of your work being thrown away, won't work. Booking.com, only 10% of experiments work. And finally, Netflix. Even high-level strategies tend to fail. And Netflix, half of Netflix strategies failed. This is by Gibson Beadle, former VP of product from Netflix, right? So again, we have lots of evidence showing that most ideas fail. No one can predict what will work or not, right? And so how do we measure that? We don't measure by the opinion of people. We actually use what we call outcome-based planning, where outcomes are the actual measure of progress, right? We follow the evidence. But what is an outcome? We need a precise definition of that. So outcomes are the measurable benefits for our customers, for our company, or our employees. When you start measuring the benefit that we're delivering, we change the conversation. And that's what we need to do. And as we give teams better tools, they'll be able to improve performance, right? When we think about outcome-based planning, the key concept comes from Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. So we start by thinking, hey, what's the outcome we want to achieve, and work backwards from it, right? Amazon uses exactly the same concept, right? We start with the customer and work backward, right? So we always start by thinking, what's the outcome? What's the measurable benefit we want to create? Okay. And let's talk a little bit about OKR, how OKR fits in the puzzle. OKR is the best tool we have for adopting outcome-based planning, right? And let's start with the basics of OKR, right? There's a great formula that comes from Intel, which is called the as measured by formula, and we tweaked it a little bit, okay? So the idea is to create a great OKR, you have to say, what are you going to improve? And also, how are you going to measure it, okay? Just by asking people what you're going to improve, it changes the conversation, okay? It gets a little bit harder to think about launching a feature, right? Small change, think about what you want to improve, okay? And then the as measured by formula is the best way to introduce the OKR components. The objective, what you want to improve, and the key result, how you measure it, okay? So let's go to a simple example of an OKR. An objective could be create an awesome customer experience. Yeah, this answers the question, what do you want to improve? But unless I tell you how we're going to measure it, we don't have an OKR yet, okay? So that's why we need the key results. They answer the measure by what question. So in this example here, that awesome customer experience would come if we would increase the repurchase rate, the customer satisfaction, while maintaining the customer acquisition cost, okay? But there's a key concept here is to make a distinction between activities and key results. That will help you move away from the waiter model. Activities are what you do. They go in your backlog. Key results are outcomes, the measurable benefits you want to generate, okay? Simple rule, if it goes in your backlog, it doesn't go in your OKRs. Very simple, okay? And the way to do this is to use separate buckets. This is a key tool to helping people move away from thinking about deliverables. The first bucket, you're going to put your key results, okay? The outcomes you want to achieve, the benefits you want to achieve. In the second bucket, you're going to put your activities, all your ideas for things that could help you achieve your OKRs, right? Using those two buckets helps build a mental bridge for people who are used to thinking about solutions, right? Two separate buckets. Managing activities is very important. Unless you get things done, you never achieve your OKRs. But most of the things on the right will not work. So you use your OKR as a feedback loop while you test different ideas on the right, okay? So Agile frameworks they all work on the right bucket, the second bucket, and they are very important. Getting things done, very important, okay? But it doesn't show you're going to actually deliver the outcomes, deliver those measurable benefits, okay? So quick example of the two buckets. The first one will have the same OKR. The second one will have a few examples. Oh, we can launch a new project, a new feature. You could redesign the customer journey. But if you launch a feature and your purchase rate doesn't move, you're not successful, right? Things on the right are mostly ideas, and you have to test those different ideas. And high performance teams know how to test those ideas very quickly and discard the ones that are not working, okay? And there's a key advice that comes from Arissa Meyer. She was a former vice president of product from Google. She was the first female engineer at Google. She has a very simple and important advice. It's not a key result unless it has a number. Very, very simple. The very first thing has to have a number. Remember the key result, they answer the measure by what question, okay? So they have to have a number. Qualitative key results don't make sense by definition. It's how we measure if we're delivering the benefits, okay? Now, for something a little bit harder, all key results have numbers, but not everything that has a number is a key result, okay? When you tell people they are deep into the waiter mindset, they start to bend things until they fit an OKR. Oh, they start doing things like, I'm going to launch 3 features. There's a number, okay. Sorry, that doesn't count, right? So having a number is not enough. Things like publish 5 posts on my blog, or my personal favorite, increase the number of times I clean my desk from 2 to 5. Sorry, that's not a key result either. Having a number doesn't mean it's a key result. Using the from X to Y format is also not a key result, okay? And then, because between activities and the key results, the outcomes, we have something in the middle, which are, how many things have you delivered for the outputs, right? You're shipping things. And measuring throughput is very easy. How many features you delivered, how many story points you delivered, how many blogs you posted. Very easy to measure, but they don't imply that you actually deliver the benefits, okay? So be very careful with things in the middle. They will trick you, okay? Outputs are not outcomes, okay? Counting how many things you delivered is not the same thing as measuring the benefits, okay? So how do you solve that? Another very simple technique and very, very powerful. Key result must pass the SOA test. Very simple technique. Let me explain how to apply it in practice, and we're going to do an exercise. Imagine you have 10 minutes to present your OKRs to the board. 10 minutes. And then you tell them, oh, my key result is to create an engagement program. And then one of the board members says, so what? Have you been able to actually increase engagement? We don't want an engagement program. We want the benefits of a successful engagement program. Let's measure the benefits, right? So the SOA test is an easy, simple question that helps you focus on the benefit and start a conversation. Another example. My key result is launch a new feature. So what? What is the benefit? I don't care about a feature. What has changed for our customers or for our company? What's the difference? Okay? So the SOA test is a very simple and powerful technique that will allow you to move away from thinking about deliverables and start a conversation about the benefits. The first time you do it, it can sound very aggressive, in your face attitude. But after a while, you realize you're actually helping people when you ask the SOA question and you start a conversation around the benefits, right? So what we need to unlearn, working software is the primary measure of progress. We definitely need to unlearn this thing, right? Outcomes are the measure of progress. If you ship software that nobody uses, so what? Great quote from Peter Drucker explaining why outputs are so dangerous. There's surely nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency what should not be done at all. But please remember this quote, okay? Because velocity is a terrible metric. Velocity in the wrong direction is just waste. Doing efficiently, building software that nobody wants, is a huge waste, right? And again, one of the things we need to unlearn, the whole concept of Jeff Sutherland's title of the book, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. The goal was never to deliver twice the software. The goal is to deliver the benefits through software. We don't want a team of more efficient waiters. Maybe delivering less software is better because software has maintenance costs, has bugs. So you can deliver the same benefit with half software. Great idea. Okay? We need to unlearn this. Very, very important. Unlearn velocity. Right? And again, Ron Jeffries, I like to say that I may have invented story points. And if I did, I'm sorry now. The company's still using story points. The guy who created story points says he's sorry for it. That's usually a sign that the technique is not a very good one. Okay? We need to unlearn everything that's related to the waiter model. Software